You're not reading them. You're reacting to them. You walk into a room. You feel it shift. The tone, the tension, the unspoken. You sense what they don't say. You adjust. You soften. You mirror. You think you're scanning signal, but you're sinking to emotional charge. You call it empathy, but it's not clarity. It's fusion. You don't hold space. You dissolve inside it. You don't observe. You absorb. And every time you do, you give away control of your tone, your thoughts, your system. You don't lead the moment. You sync to someone else's emotional signal. Not because you're weak, but because your nervous system was trained to keep peace at the cost of self-possession. That's not empathy. That's overexposure. True empathy doesn't fuse. It filters. It sees, but doesn't flinch. It feels, but doesn't move. Real clarity doesn't mirror. It stabilizes. So let's rewire what empathy means. Let's build a version that sees through people without being pulled into them. Let's start with cold empathy. Empathy in a strong system equals awareness. In a weak one equals reaction. Empathy isn't the problem. The system you run it through is. In a strong system, empathy is awareness. It notices. It decodes. It understands. But in a weak system, empathy becomes reaction, absorption, fusion. You don't read people. You echo their system. They're sad. You shrink. They're tense. You tiptoe. They're angry. You agree, just to keep peace. You think you're connecting. You're becoming signal noise. True empathy observes the signal. Cold empathy verifies the source. But emotional reactivity, it skips all of that. It responds to feeling without separating who it belongs to. And that's how empathy becomes dangerous. Not because you feel too much, but because you lose where you end and they begin. Strong empathy says, I see what you're carrying, but I don't need to carry it for you. Weak empathy says, if you feel it, I must feel it too. And when you live like that, you don't just process their energy. You get rewritten by it. Your voice dims. Your decisions bend. Your emotional state becomes a mirror for someone else's unresolved weight. This isn't empathy. It's emotional open access. And the more you repeat it, the more invisible you become. Not out of strength, out of surrender. Cold empathy corrects that. It doesn't close the system. It filters the input. It doesn't suppress emotion. It just stops outsourcing authority. You still feel, you still care, but you stay separate, stable, sovereign. So the real question isn't, are you empathic? It's, does your empathy make you clear or reactive? Because only one of those can be trusted in pressure, and that's where we go next. Signs you're being pulled in, not reading out. Empathy becomes a liability the moment you can't separate what you feel from who you are. You don't lose clarity in one moment. You lose it in small leaks, little shifts, tiny permissions. And over time, you're not reading people. You're running them. Here's how you know. 1. You adjust your energy before they even speak. Their tone dips. You soften. Their face tightens. You over-explain. You think it's awareness. It's anticipation, driven by emotional prediction, not truth. 2. You apologize for emotions that aren't yours. They feel off. You auto-adjust. They're low. You feel responsible. But empathy doesn't mean you own what you didn't cause. 3. You walk away with their mood still in your system. You replay the conversation. You carry their sadness into your evening. You feel heavy, but nothing actually happened to you. That's not compassion. That's emotional fusion. 4. You withhold truth to protect someone else's comfort. You edit your words. You delay your honesty. You tiptoe around clarity, all to keep someone stable. You're not keeping peace. You're letting someone else write your internal script. These aren't random behaviors. They're signs that your empathy has no filtration system. You don't observe, you absorb, you don't reflect, you react. And the moment you react to their emotion more than your own alignment, you lose signal control. Cold empathy doesn't disconnect. It disconnects reactivity. You still feel, but you stop syncing. You still read, but you stop merging. That's when empathy becomes clarity. And that's what we train next. Cold empathy. Feel everything. Move nothing. You don't need to shut it off. You need to stop being moved by it. You don't need less empathy. You need stronger boundaries inside it. You need to stop letting emotion override execution. You just need to stop following every feeling. That's cold empathy. You feel the shift, the sadness, the insecurity, the fear behind their silence. But you don't flinch. You don't lean. You don't collapse. You stay where you are. Because presence isn't proven by emotion. It's proven by stillness under signal. When someone unravels, you don't match it. You don't catch it. You anchor it. They cry. You don't. Not because you're disconnected, but because someone needs to stay rooted. You hold your clarity like a wall around your nervous system. Not cold, just structured. Not distant, just not reactive. Most people think empathy is motion. Cold empathy knows. It's emotional containment architecture. You can listen without softening the truth. You can understand without editing your response. You can witness pain without installing it. Cold empathy is calm that doesn't copy. It sees, it scans, but it doesn't shift. You think that makes you robotic, but the truth is, it makes you trustworthy. Because when people fall apart, they don't need reflection. They need regulation. They need a presence that doesn't get swept away. You feel everything, but you hold your shape. You read the whole emotional system and still stay outside it. You care, but you don't convert care into collapse. That's cold empathy. Not the absence of connection, but the protection of center while remaining fully present. And now we move into how that protection works in real time. Cold empathy system. 3 tactical steps to read. Without reacting, empathy doesn't need to be reduced. It needs to be reframed. You don't need to feel less. You need to stop turning feeling into reaction. Cold empathy runs like a protocol. 3 steps. No emotion, just clarity. 1. Observe the pattern, not the pain. Most people zoom in on the story, the tears, the tone, the words. But cold empathy zooms out. It doesn't ask, how do they feel? It asks, how do they always respond when they feel like this? Because people don't react. They rerun emotional code. And when you see the loop, you stop taking it personally. You don't absorb the pain. You analyze the system. 2. Separate insight from involvement. Just because you understand them doesn't mean you have to carry them. You can hold space without stepping into it. You can listen without surrendering truth. You can validate without abandoning your position. Empathy is signal flow, not a data handshake, so treat it like signal, not obligation. 3. Reflect without absorbing. This is where most empathy breaks. You feel what they feel, so you match it. You mirror it. You react with softness to balance their sharpness. But cold empathy doesn't copy signal. It contains it. You can say, I hear you, without agreeing. You can stabilize space without submitting to it. Your nervous system stays yours, no matter what theirs is doing. These 3 steps form the system. Observe the loop. Stay outside the feeling. Return truth without emotional translation. You don't lose empathy. You gain precision. Because cold empathy isn't robotic. It's calibrated. It's the ability to feel without leaking, to sense without surrender, and to show up without being moved out of position. That's not indifference. That's discipline. And the most trusted people in the room are the ones who can feel everything and still stay still. Final message. The person who sees you but never lets you. Steer them. You've met them. The one who listens deeply. Hears what you don't say. Feels what you're holding back. But doesn't flinch. Doesn't soften. Doesn't perform. They're not cold. They're clear. You test them. With silence. With overexposure. With emotional bait. They don't chase. They don't mirror. They don't shift. They just stay still. Grounded. Reading everything. Reacting to nothing. You can't steer them. Because their system isn't wired to follow feelings. You can be seen without being steered. That's power. Not because they disconnect, but because they never hand over access. They don't need to say much. Because their calm speaks louder than your performance. They are proof that you can feel without fusing. Care without collapsing. Understand without absorbing. That's cold empathy. The rarest kind of presence. Fully aware. Completely intact. And if you want to move like that, feeling isn't a command. It's a test of containment. In the next video, we'll decode the silent tests people run on you. The emotional triggers they press to see if you're stable or steerable. Subscribe. Don't mirror. Don't react. Just read. And remain.